We're Hasani and Danielle Pettiford, and we're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
I was very frustrated. I became very disconnected, very jaded and cold.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission, to change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships. This is the Couples Academy Show.
All right, guys, welcome to the Couples Academy Show. My name is Hasani. It is a pleasure to be with you here this morning. We're talking about the consequences of an affair. On yesterday, we were talking about the consequences of an affair on the couple, on the marriage, and today we're going to be talking about the consequences of an affair on the betrayed spouse. What happens when a person's trust is violated, when they have been hit hard with the reality that an affair has occurred? What do they go through? There's a spiral, a negative spiral. You go into a dark place. Things go from bad to worst oftentimes. We're going to talk about what that is. But before we jump in, guys, we're excited because this Saturday is the it is the Enneagram Masterclass Inside Job. I'm excited because I'm seeing what we're doing to put this particular session together for you. Some incredible things, some incredible insight. If you don't know your Enneagram number, make sure you go and take the test and get your number so you come in with an understanding of who you are and how you're wired, so that you could properly navigate through the 4-hour session. It's going to be informational, but it's also going to be experiential. We have exercises and we have all types of things to do, so you will come out better than the way that you went in. So if you want to figure out how to take your life and your relationship to the next level, you need to click the link in the description and sign up today. We have a few slots left, and we're excited to be able to really impact you in a powerful way. Also, FOUNDRY, UNEARTHED, there's a bunch of things happening in the next few weeks that we're going to get into. But listen, guys, let's jump right in. I want to get started with this conversation. Make sure as you're watching, you're taking the time to like, share, and subscribe. Let the people know that we're live, because there's so many people who are going through situations and they need help and guidance. They need something, and you could be an advocate in that process by giving them what they need. All right, guys, we're going to jump right in and talk about the consequences that the betrayed spouse has when it comes to an affair. Number one, we got to talk about the mood swings. We have to talk about this because let me tell you something. The most volatile portion of the recovery process is oftentimes what we would call the discovery season or the discovery phase. That's when you first find out about it. And so it's an emotional up and down journey. From one day to the next, you're experiencing all types of emotions. In one moment, you're enraged, full of anger and fury. In the next moment, you are saddened and you're whelping with tears and you're crying. And then in the next moment, you could feel literally emotionally numb. You're going through all of these mood swings because it's like my life is spiraling out of control. It has a major, major, major impact on your emotions. And so a lot of people come to last chance weekends or private intensives completely depressed, saddened, enraged. They're in a space of desperation, looking for something so that they can begin to feel normal again. And I think that's one of the challenges that the betrayed spouse feels. They just don't feel normal. They don't feel themselves. They don't feel like they have any proper control or management of their emotions because of what has happened. And so that is a consequence that not only they themselves feel, but their spouse who was unfaithful can feel that pain, because as we always say, it creates a pain and a brokenness and a hurt within a betrayed spouse, and then oftentimes is redirected and projected towards the one who created the pain in the first place. So that is something that, as a result of what he or she is suffering from, they both begin to suffer from. The second thing that the betrayed spouse really struggles with is global shame. There's a shame. You know, for instance, there's a couple that I'm working with right now in a foreign country, and there was an anticipation that the betrayed spouse would share it with someone, share it with a friend, share it with a family member, share it with someone because he needs to talk it out. And at this point, he's not willing to talk. And so he connected with his friends and didn't open up and didn't share it. And that created concern in the mind and in the heart of the betrayed spouse. And the reality is, oftentimes, and this is what I find to be very true and common, the reason why a betrayed spouse does not share with their friends, does not share with their betrayed spouse's family, is because there's a level of shame, because this wasn't supposed to happen to me. This wasn't supposed to happen to us. We were that couple. We were the couple in ministry that everybody came to for advice. We were the couple in the profession. Don't you know that we have many couples that we serve that are actually therapists and practitioners and marriage counselors who experience pain and trauma in their own relationship but don't want to share because, wow, what would that mean for them, and what would that mean for all the people that they serve? Or maybe they're some form of leadership, or they're public, official, or they have some type of clout and influence. And so the shame of what we've gone through keeps them from opening up, keeps them from even getting the help that they need, because no one can know about this deep, dark secret. And so it keeps them trapped in their misery and in their pain. And so it's a shot to their self-esteem. It's a shot to their self-worth. They begin to feel not good enough, insecure. All types of things begin to happen internally within that individual as a result of what has happened. And so that's something to be mindful of. I think oftentimes the unfaithful partner doesn't truly understand internally what the betrayed spouse is going through. And even though they react emotionally and they say a lot of hurtful things because they're hurting, I don't think there's a true appreciation for the journey that their spouse is going through. And so hearing it from me hopefully will give you some insight. But let's go to the next consequence that oftentimes the betrayed spouse deals with. And it's sexualization. Well, what does that mean? Sexualization. Well, it manifests in a number of different ways. Oftentimes, the betrayed spouse seeks out lots of sex because they need to feel needed. They need to feel wanted. They need to feel attractive. They need to feel sexy. They need to have their self-esteem restored. And so they have all types of sex with their spouse. It seems like for some couples, when an affair happens, if there's been little sex or no sex, they go into sexual overdrive because I need to know that I'm still attractive. I need to know that I still have it, because obviously there was a reason why you went to her. There was a reason why you went to him. And now I've got to make up for or compensate or compete with the affair partner. So what did he do or what did she do that was so great that took you away, took them, it caused you to leave me, right? Because you went to them. So now I got to compete and overcompensate myself in order to keep you from leaving, because I have a fear that you may leave again. And I got to keep you with sex, or I got to have sex so that I feel good within myself. But then sexualization works in the opposite way. Your relationship can become asexual. Because I'm so traumatized by what has happened, the last thing I want to do is have sex with you. The last thing I will allow you to do is touch me. And so sex is now off the table. And what did you do with her? Well, guess what? Whatever you did with her, we're not doing. Oh, you kissed? We're not kissing. Oh, okay, you had sex in these particular positions? We can't do that anymore. That's completely off the list of possibilities. And so you go in the opposite direction. Or maybe when you begin to introduce sex again, it becomes very triggered. It's very triggering, because now I'm thinking, well, is this what you did with her? Is this what you enjoyed with him? And now when you feel some type of way in the experience, and I hear a moan, I hear a pant, is that what you had with that person? So many things go on in the mind of the betrayed spouse. That's why there's such a hypersensitivity to how we begin to introduce sex back into the relationship. When we introduce sex back into the relationship, when is sex safe? When is sex healthy? It's a very, very, very important space to make sure that you transition into the right way, because at the end of the day, intimacy is critically important. And sex without intimacy can be very problematic. And we find that many people think, well, if we just have sex, that solves the problem. But if there's no intimacy, right, which is different than sex, then it's going to cause a problem. So I hope this is helping in terms of you understanding what the betrayed spouse goes through in terms of a consequence. Let's go to the next one. There's a global mistrust. Right? Well, what do we mean by a global mistrust? Not only am I struggling to trust you now because of what you've done, because what you've done and you've gotten away with it for, let's just say, so long, a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, a couple of years. This relationship has been living in the shadows of our primary marital relationship. I don't trust you. I begin to question everything. I begin to reevaluate the entire relationship. What was real? What was not? What was genuine? What was not? What was happening during this time? Remember we went on that vacation? Remember this birthday? Remember that anniversary? What was happening during that time? I begin to revisit our entire experience because of what has happened. So I struggle to be able to trust. As we said before, trust is lost in buckets and gained in drops, and it's going to take quite some time to get me back to a place where I can genuinely trust. But global trust, we say, because now I don't even trust myself. I thought I had insight. I thought I knew what was going on, but obviously I'm starting to question myself. That's a huge thing. And when I begin to question me, now I'm in a very uncomfortable place. Now, questioning you now leads to the third piece of the global mistrust. I begin to mistrust everyone and everything, because if my spouse, who is the closest one to me, could do this to me, then who really can I trust? So now I operate with suspicion and doubt and fear and anxiety and trepidation and complete mistrust for everyone because of what has happened. And so when we're talking about the rebuilding of the trust in the relationship, it just doesn't affect the relationship, guys. It affects every single area and component of our lives. This is one of the consequences that oftentimes the betrayed partner faces. Let's go to the next. Controlling behaviors. Now, one of the biggest complaints of the unfaithful partner is that my spouse is so controlling, and it's hard to live in an environment where I am being controlled. Well, guess what? Even though most betrayed spouses would not admit it, they are very controlling because they've lost their sense of control. See, things were going in a particular way. There was an order to things. There was an expectation. There was an assumption. There was a lifestyle that you both were living. There was a non-written, almost assumed contract about what life would be like. And now that I've realized that, I've been betrayed, now I've got to get control of the situation again. I got to get control of my life. I've got to control you. Because if I'm going to prevent this from ever happening again, I've got to control every single thing that you do, knowing that ultimately that doesn't work, but there's this knee-jerk reaction to control. And so many controlling behaviors begin to take place in the relationship, which can continue to cause a continual strain on the relationship. And so this is why it's so critically important to get guidance and get help to walk you through these particular things. Because let me tell you something, that controlling nature, once that becomes the new norm, it's hard to now let go of that. When you feel like, okay, things are well now, well, the only way to keep things well is to maintain this sense of control. And that ultimately does not work long term when you're in your restoration process. So if you acknowledge it or not, most likely there are ways that you are being very controlling, and it ultimately doesn't serve anyone. So that's something to really work through. Another consequence to the betrayed spouse when an affair occurs is rage and attacks. Now, this may not be your situation. Maybe you personally have never done anything that was hurtful towards your spouse, but many people find themselves in this trap, particularly during the discovery phase. That is the most volatile phase in the entire process. And so we have gotten 911 calls, even though we're not 911. We've gotten emergency calls when couples were involved in traumatic situations, okay, where things were broken, all right, tires were slashed, Cars were keyed. Punches and fights broke out. Things were set ablaze. All types of things have occurred. There have been situations where betrayed spouses have literally looked for any evidence of relationship. Say I've been married for 20 years. Any evidence of our 20-year marriage, I'm destroying it, right? I'm going all in. I will physically hurt and harm you if you get near my space. And these are some of the dark spaces that betrayed spouses oftentimes find themselves in because they're in so much agonizing pain that the only way that I can release it, so one thinks, is in this negative, toxic manner. And somehow the thought is, now that you've hurt me, I am going to punish you. Now I'm going to seek revenge. Now, if I don't seek revenge by cheating on you, my form of revenge will be punishing you. But the reality is, it's a slippery slope. Because if you inherently believe that no matter what you do, it'll never measure up to what your spouse did, then the question becomes, how long will you continue to punish your partner? How long will you continue to do that before you really accept, okay, they've suffered enough? Well, if nothing that you ever do can ever measure up to what they've done, then they'll never, ever, ever suffer enough, which keeps you in this perpetual pattern of pain where you continue to hurt and harm your spouse, which ultimately hurt and harms you and the relationship. And that's the space that you get trapped in. So we know many people who've been on the receiving side of the hurt and pain, particularly men, because usually in this society, a man can't get away with being physically aggressive to a woman without getting into some type of legal trouble, right? There's a social contract that we all have that, men don't beat women, generally speaking, and get away with it, and it'll be okay. But we've seen it on the other side. In fact, interestingly enough, when you look at domestic violence cases, overwhelmingly, a lot of them have been initiated by women. Interestingly enough. And so oftentimes, because they're not going to go out and cheat, they will ball up a fist, they will grab something, they will break something, they will get physically violent as a way of punishing their partner. Okay? The next consequence, obsessive questioning. This is where we are trapped in a conversation that becomes never ending because we need to talk about it. And it seems like after a month, we're talking about the affair. After 6 months, we're talking about the affair. After a year, we're talking about the affair. 2 years later, we're talking about the affair. 3 years later, we're talking about the affair. When are we going to move beyond the affair? Why are we still dealing with the details? Because you haven't answered my questions yet. Because you haven't given me a comprehensive answer. Because that you still struggle to tell me the why. And as long as you resist telling me what I need to know, I'm going to continue to be preoccupied with the whole idea of what has occurred. And even when you've told me everything, I still have more questions because one of the reasons why I continue to ask questions is because I'm struggling to accept that this thing actually happened. Not just about the what of the affair, but oftentimes people get trapped in understanding the why of the affair. And this is why it's so important to have somebody navigate you through these conversations. And just as much as the spouse wants to have the conversations is just as much as the other spouse does not. And then now you have gridlock and you've got this tug of war and you're going back and forth and nothing seems to be working. And now conversations become very emotional. And now we're yelling and screaming and fussing and fighting again. And now we shut down and we go into our separate corners. And the only time we come together is when it's contentious. And guess what? We have to deal with the affair because we got to finish the conversation that we started that we have no resolution on. We keep concluding conversations, but there's no resolution with these conversations. And I'm not willing to talk about anything else until this issue is resolved. And that's the space that people find themselves in. There's a preoccupation with the affair. And as long as we continue to stay talking about the affair, it's as long as I continue to stay trapped in the emotions attached to the affair. As long as we keep talking about the past, I begin to relive and experience that past moment all over again. And it's no longer in the past, it's in the present. That's why we carry this pain with us for so long, because we haven't learned how to effectively engage in a conversation that is healing, that brings clarity, and brings closure. Now, while obsessive questioning is one of the things that the betrayed spouse continues to engage in, it can then lead to this: avoidance. Don't touch me. Don't come near me. I don't want to talk to you. You disgust me. Give me my space. I'm not interested. I don't want to be connected. And this is how we go from soulmates to rolemates to roommates. Emotional disconnect. We are now not legally divorced, but we're experiencing an emotional and social divorce. Right? We no longer do life together. There's no togetherness between us. I'm going to do me. You can do you. We'll come together pertaining to the kids, pertaining to bills and finances. But other than that, boom, I'm not interested. We live life by complete avoidance. Though we are in close proximity physically in the same home, we are miles apart, connected and living in two different galaxies. And how is it that I feel closer to my friends who live thousands of miles away than to my spouse who's in the bed right next to me? Because the emotional connection has been destroyed. There has been a breach. And every single day that we deal with this in an ineffective way, that breach widens and widens and widens until we're completely disconnected. And it feels as if we are as far apart from each other as the East is from the West. That's pretty far. So avoidance becomes one of the consequences that oftentimes the betrayed spouse suffers from in the affair. Let's go to the next one. And the final one for today: escapist and addictive behaviors. Let me tell you something. Because I don't know how to properly deal with what it is that I'm going through, guess what I do? I go to the only thing that can give me relief and comfort in this moment, and that's the bottle. Don't you know there's a high rate of alcoholism, which is a consequence of an affair, where it's hard for me to deal with my emotions. So how do I deal with my emotions? I drink to sedate myself, because I no longer want to feel the pain. And guess what? I just need a drink. And so I go from glass number 1 to glass number 2 to a complete bottle, to a second bottle. And then before you know it, I need something. This is not working. I need something harder. So now I'm going to start drinking stronger drinks, and then I'm going to the bar, and now that becomes my new norm. And now it's so bad I don't even want to go to the bar because I'm embarrassed. If people see me drink, I'm just going to buy everything I need. I'm going to store it in the house. And so before you know it, around the clock, I'm drinking and drinking and drinking and sedating myself just to disconnect from my own feelings and emotions, because I just don't feel normal. And if it's not through alcohol, maybe it's through drugs. Oh, yes, it happens. And now that we have marijuana that is legalized in many states, that becomes the knee-jerk reaction. That's what I do, because I just need to veg out. I just need to relax. I just need to get my mind and my spirit and my soul and my body in a tranquil state. So I will do this, right? So now I'm going to rely on substances to manage my own emotions and the chemicals within my body, because I cannot do it on my own. And so I wind up going into destructive behaviors and addictive patterns to deal with or to not deal with what's going on internally. And at the end of the day, by engaging in all of these practices, which are consequences of what I, as a betrayed spouse, is going through, it will have a tremendous impact on the marriage and on the family. Home life completely shifts and changes because of what I'm going through. And if you find yourself in that dark place and you've given up on yourself, you've lost hope, you don't see the possibility of what can be, you are just in a deep, dark place, and you're vacillating back and forth. Do I stay? Do I go? What's the point of staying? What's the point of going? If that's where you are, you need to get help, because this is something that you cannot do on your own. It requires connecting with someone who can guide you through a process that can bring about healing and restoration to your life. And this is why we have one-on-one private sessions. This is why we have Unearthed. This is why we have Foundry. This is why we have the Last Chance Weekend, because you cannot do it on your own. And so I would highly recommend you reach out to us. Go to the website, couplesacademy.org. Set up a call, 678-200-8996, because we want to be here to guide you through a process to bring you back to yourself, where you can become whole and complete within you. At this point, when you're not even sure what your future looks like with your spouse, your number one focus should be getting your personal healing. Because as long as you remain in an unhealthy state, every decision you make will be unhealthy, and it will not serve you. And so the goal should be to go from destructive behaviors all the way to a very healthy state of being, so that the thoughts you think and the decisions that you make are a reinforcement of something that is healthy. Healthy people don't make unhealthy decisions, and unhealthy people can't make healthy decisions. So what do I do in the meantime? I connect with people, organizations, assistants who are healthy, who can help me become healthy, so that I can then begin to do things that reinforce what I'm internally feeling within me, and that's making healthy decisions for my life, for my marriage, and for my family. These are the consequences. Guys, I hope you got something out of today's conversation. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the consequences of the unfaithful partner and how they begin to navigate through that. So listen, guys, I hope you got something out of today. Remember, tonight, Before I Do with Walter and Charmaine, that is at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you tune into that. But till then, till the morning, have a great one. Love you guys.